There is a city in the heart of Europe where you can have breakfast in one country, lunch in another, and dinner in a third, all without ever boarding a plane. It's called Bratislava, and it's the only capital in the world that borders two countries at the same time. Yet, when you ask people what they know about Slovakia, most draw a blank. Today, I'm going to find out why this capital, sandwiched between Vienna and Budapest, remains one of the most overlooked on the entire continent. Let's start with the basics. Slovakia has just over 5 million inhabitants, and its capital, Bratislava, barely exceeds 400,000. To put that into perspective, it's smaller than many provincial cities in Latin America. But the interesting part isn't its size, it's its location. From Bratislava's historic center, you can walk to the Austrian border in under an hour, and a train ride gets you to Vienna in 45 minutes. Budapest, the Hungarian capital, is just over 2 hours away. It is quite literally the crossroads of Central Europe. When you walk through the old town, your first feeling is one of surprise. Cobblestone streets, pastel-colored Baroque buildings, and cafes tucked away in inner courtyards. It looks a lot like Vienna, but without the crowds or the Viennese prices. A coffee here can cost half of what it does in the Austrian capital, and as a visitor, you notice that right away. But Bratislava has two completely different sides. If you cross the Danube River to the south, you reach Petrzalka, a neighborhood built during the communist era that houses over 100,000 people in identical mass-produced apartment blocks from the 1970s and 1980s. In fact, it is one of the largest Soviet-style residential complexes in all of Europe. Seeing this contrast between the pastel Baroque of the center and the gray concrete of Petrzalka is like traveling through two eras of European history in a single afternoon. Slavic women are consistently ranked among the most beautiful in the world, and Slovak women are no exception. Just walking through downtown Bratislava on a Saturday afternoon is enough to understand why. Distinct Slavic features, a natural elegance and style that blends the classic with the modern, and an attitude that is reserved at first but warm once the ice is broken. This reputation isn't new. For decades, the region that is now Slovakia, along with its neighbors Ukraine, Russia, and the Balkans, has been culturally associated with a beauty that combines Slavic genetics with a strong cultural identity. Educated women, most with university degrees, who deeply value family but have also successfully carved out their paths in an increasingly competitive labor market within the European Union. For anyone considering Slovakia as a destination, whether to visit or to move to, this has become another element of the country's overall appeal. It's not the only one, of course, but it is real and part of the character of this nation, which blends Central European tradition with the openness of being part of the European Union for over 2 decades now. If you enjoy this kind of content about lesser-known European countries, subscribe to the channel. Every week, I visit places that hardly anyone shows, with real facts and no filters. Now let's talk about the people. During my visit, I spoke with several locals. One of them, the owner of a small souvenir shop in the old town, told me something that perfectly sums up how many Slovaks feel. They are tired of being confused with another country. He explained that it's very common for tourists to think Slovakia is the same as Slovenia, a completely different country located over 800 kilometers away. This constant confusion has made many Slovaks feel like their country simply doesn't exist on most travelers' mental maps. And this confusion is no accident. The names are so similar because both countries share a common Slavic root. The word Slav comes from an ancient root meaning the one who speaks with clear words, that is, someone who can communicate, unlike neighboring peoples whom the Slavs considered mute. Both Slovakia and Slovenia derive from this, two distinct nations that share a linguistic origin but have been geographically and politically separated for centuries. Slovakia is located in Central Europe, bordering Austria, Hungary, Poland, and the Czech Republic. Slovenia, on the other hand, is in Southern Europe, bordering Italy and Croatia, with access to the Adriatic Sea. They are literally two countries that do not share a border, separated by Austria and Hungary, yet they continue to be constantly confused in the collective imagination. Yet, the history of this region is remarkable. For centuries, Bratislava was the capital of the Kingdom of Hungary, and several Hungarian kings and queens were crowned in its castle. Bratislava Castle, which dominates the skyline from a hill by the river, was rebuilt several times over the centuries and today offers some of the best panoramic views of the entire city, with Austria visible on the western horizon. Another fact that surprises many visitors is the size of the historic center. Unlike other European capitals, Bratislava's old town can be completely explored on foot in less than 2 hours. This makes it a perfect destination for a quick getaway, or for those already visiting Vienna or Budapest who want to add a third country to their trip without any logistical hassle. Rent for a one-bedroom apartment in the center of Bratislava is around 700 to 800 euros a month. Outside the center, that figure drops to about 500 euros. Compared to Vienna, where a similar apartment can easily exceed 1,000 euros. The difference is huge, especially considering that both cities are less than an hour apart. Food is also remarkably cheaper. A full meal at a downtown restaurant can cost between 8 and 12 euros, and basic supermarket items are, on average, 20% to 30% cheaper than in Austria. This has made Bratislava an increasingly attractive destination, not just for tourists, but for people looking to work in Austria while living on a much more reasonable budget just across the border. And this brings us to an interesting point for anyone thinking of moving to Europe. Slovakia has been part of the European Union since 2004 and the Schengen area since 2007. This means that, with the right permits, a foreigner working in Bratislava can move freely between Slovakia, Austria, Hungary, and the rest of the Schengen countries. Many workers choose to live in Bratislava, where the cost of living is lower, and cross the border every day to work in Vienna, where salaries are higher. It's a strategy some informally call living in one country and working in another. When it comes to job opportunities, Slovakia has become a major industrial hub in Central Europe, particularly in the automotive sector. Companies like Volkswagen, Peugeot, and Jaguar Land Rover have major plants in the country, generating thousands of jobs for both locals and foreign workers. In fact, relative to its population, Slovakia is one of the largest car producers in the world. For those considering relocation, The process of obtaining work permits within the European Union, if coming from outside the bloc, requires going through visa and residency permit procedures that vary depending on your country of origin. It is a process that takes time and planning, but once sorted out, it opens the doors to the entire Schengen area. What struck me most during my visit was the pace of life. Unlike Vienna or Budapest, where mass tourism has completely transformed the city centers, Bratislava still retains a genuine local atmosphere. The squares aren't overcrowded, prices aren't inflated by tourism, and it's common to see locals enjoying the very same cafes and restaurants as the visitors. However, this is starting to change. More and more travelers are discovering the city, drawn precisely by its proximity to Vienna and Budapest and its still reasonable prices. Some tourism analysts predict that over the next few years, Bratislava could become one of the fastest-growing destinations in Central Europe, following a similar pattern to what Prague experienced 2 decades ago. So the question that remains is this: is Bratislava the next great European capital that everyone is about to discover, or will it remain that well-kept secret nestled between Austria and Hungary? One thing is for sure, while the rest of the world remains focused on the usual capital cities, this small city on the banks of the Danube continues to offer something increasingly hard to find in Europe: authenticity without the crowds. If you made it this far, let me know in the comments if you knew about Bratislava before this video, and which of the countries I've shown on the channel you'd like me to visit next.